He was more than a dog. Bravo had pulled a kidnapped girl from shadows, her torn blanket still in hand. He tracked a missing man through fog-soaked woods and led him home just before the frost hit. He lunged in front of a runaway car to stop it from crushing a stroller. He stood silent and still beside a locked collar box, until the bomb squad confirmed the danger he already sensed. And once, he faced down a gunman, shielding a trembling teen with nothing but muscle and trust. But today, Bravo walked slowly, not for duty, but for goodbye. His handler, Officer Reyes, held the leash with a trembling hand. As Bravo passed the playground fence, the wooded trail, the roadside crosswalk, the precinct wall, he paused, remembering, honoring. Then a child stepped forward, holding that same shredded blanket. Reyes turned pale, and Bravo stopped walking. Before we continue, do me a favor, hit like and subscribe so you never miss. The morning air was crisp with the scent of dry leaves and old stone. The sun had not yet broken through the soft gray sky, but the precinct lot was already full. People gathered shoulder to shoulder, some in uniform, others in plain clothes, their eyes all fixed in the same direction. In the center of it all stood a German shepherd with a black and tan coat, a faded scar over one eye, and a leash that swayed gently in the breeze. His name was Bravo. Bravo stood still, his ears alert, his stance proud. His leash was held by Officer Reyes, a man known throughout the department for his stoicism. Reyes was not one to speak much, not even at roll call. But today, as he gripped the leash tighter, something in his posture betrayed him. His shoulders rose and fell with shallow breaths. The corner of his mouth twitched, fighting gravity. This was not a day for commands or protocols. Today was Bravo's final walk. They had prepared for a short ceremony. A few words, a plaque, maybe some applause. But no one had expected this. No one had expected the crowd. No one had expected the cameras. And certainly no one had expected Bravo to take the lead. Not just in motion, but in meaning. He took his first steps slowly, each paw placed with intention. A low murmur rippled through the crowd as he passed the precinct doors, but it fell silent when he paused near the service shed. He stood there for several seconds, unmoving, eyes fixed on the steel frame. That was where he had found her. The girl wrapped in a shredded blanket, barely 4 years old, hidden under a tarp in the corner. She had been missing for 2 days. The night Bravo found her, it had been raining. He had pulled at Reyes's vest, led him off the marked path, and dug until his paws were muddy and raw. And when they reached her, Bravo had curled his body around hers to keep her warm. A man in the crowd inhaled sharply. He recognized the spot. His hand clutched the hand of a young girl now standing beside him. Older now, but unmistakable. Bravo moved on. He walked along the asphalt path that curved behind the precinct, past the tall fence lined with gold and brown leaves. As he neared the wooded edge, he paused again. This time it was longer. This was where he had found the elderly man with Alzheimer's, lost, disoriented, and hours away from freezing. The department had searched all night. Drones, helicopters, volunteers, but Bravo had insisted on heading toward the trees. Reyes had followed, unsure, and there, near the edge of a dry creek bed, Bravo had sat and barked once. Just once. The old man had been lying under a bush, hypothermic but alive. Bravo had stayed beside him until the medics arrived. Now, as Bravo stood in that same spot, the wind lifted a few fallen leaves and carried them in a slow spiral. Officer Reyes said nothing. His grip on the leash slackened, just slightly. The path turned toward the main road now. The highway could be heard in the distance, muffled by trees. Bravo picked up his pace. Still calm, still controlled, but purposeful. Reyes followed. At the intersection where the sidewalk narrowed near the pedestrian crossing, Bravo stopped a third time. His nose lowered, his body stilled. The crowd behind them slowed. People leaned in. Someone whispered, "It was here. This very spot," where a child's stroller had rolled into the street when the brakes failed. The mother's scream had pierced the air, and before Reyes could react, Bravo had bolted. The car had screeched, swerved, and missed the stroller by inches. Bravo had taken the hit on his side, bruised but standing. Today, the white stripes of the crosswalk were cracked and faded. Bravo looked down at them. Then he stepped over slowly, one paw at a time. Reyes's eyes were red now. They continued on. The fourth stop was near the training lot, an unassuming square of asphalt where officers ran drills and parked overflow units. It was there that Bravo had done what no machine could. A bomb threat. A false alarm, they had assumed. But Bravo had sat near the rear of an unmarked sedan, unmoving. Reyes had tried to coax him away, but Bravo had stared at the back seat, locked in. The team had opened the trunk and found a small collar box, wired, timed, real. The box had been disarmed in time. The footage later played in training rooms across the state. Now, Bravo stood in that lot again, and this time the officers standing there parted for him. No one said a word. They just watched. One final stop remained. Reyes could feel it. He did not need a plan. Bravo had one. They moved toward the playground, and as they neared the rusted gate, a child stepped forward, maybe 10 now, holding something small and familiar, a blanket, torn, worn, but unmistakably hers. The crowd hushed. Reyes froze, and Bravo stopped walking. Bravo did not move. He stood there, just beyond the gate. The crowd held in a fragile silence behind him. His posture was steady, not stiff, as if he understood the moment better than anyone else. The little girl clutched her blanket tighter. It trailed at the edges now, frayed and thin, like something loved too long to ever throw away. Officer Reyes stood behind him, unmoving. For the first time in years, he did not try to lead Bravo. He let the leash hang. His hand trembled slightly, not from the chill in the air, but from something heavier, something breaking open. The girl stepped closer. No one told her to. She just moved, one foot at a time, until she was beside Bravo. She did not speak. She reached out a hand, small and unsure, and touched his fur just behind the ear. Bravo leaned into it. A collective breath escaped the crowd, like a wind changing direction. A dozen cameras clicked at once, but the sound barely registered. Then, as if on his own time, Bravo stepped forward. The girl walked beside him. For a few steps, it was just the two of them. A silent reunion under golden trees. Officer Reyes followed. They curved around the playground and into a narrow lane leading toward the precinct's rear wall, a place only a few recognized. But Reyes knew, and Bravo knew. This was where it had all started. The wall was not part of any official memorial, no plaque, no lights, but among the bricks was a faint outline etched quietly into the stone. The name of Reyes's first partner, K9 Jet. Bravo had never met Jet. He had been trained after, but Reyes had always walked past this spot with a glance, a pause, a silence. Today, Bravo stopped there. He sat. The leash went slack. Reyes's hand dropped to his side. For several seconds, neither man nor dog moved. Then Reyes stepped forward. Slowly. He crouched next to Bravo, knees stiff, uniform jacket creasing at the shoulders. He placed a hand on Bravo's back, and with the other, reached up to touch the wall. His voice, when it came, was soft. "He would have liked you." Bravo leaned into him. For a man who had spent years swallowing grief, Reyes did not cry loudly. There was no collapse, no shudder. Just the wet glisten of his eyes and the weight of a heart that had carried too much for too long. He stayed there until a hand rested gently on his shoulder. A fellow officer. A quiet nod. They moved on. Bravo's pace was slower now. Not tired. Deliberate. Measured. As they turned onto the main road, the unexpected happened. People had lined the sidewalks, not just a few from the department. Dozens, then more, civilians, children, firemen in uniform, local business owners, students, retirees. Some held signs, others held silence, but all held something in their faces, reverence perhaps, or recognition. Somewhere along the way, Bravo's final walk had gone viral. A clip, just a few seconds long, had made it online. Him standing beside the blanket girl, the way he paused at each rescue site, the trail of paw prints he left behind. The internet had picked it up. News stations, too. And the town responded. They came. They kept coming. Bravo walked through them all, his head high, his steps steady. And then he stopped again. It was a narrow alley now, tucked between two brick buildings. Nothing special. Except for one detail. Painted on the wall, fresh but already weathering, was a mural. 5 scenes, stylized, symbolic, the blanket, the woods, the stroller, the collar box, the teen behind Bravo's silhouette, and beneath them all, a single line. Some heroes never speak, but they are always heard. Reyes read the words once, then again. Bravo walked to the base of the mural. He looked up, then sat down. This was not just a farewell. It was a story only he could tell. And somehow, he had. Reyes crouched beside him once more. His voice cracked as he whispered, "You chose every step, didn't you?" Bravo looked ahead, but in that moment, Reyes finally saw. Bravo had not been led. He had led them. He had taken them, all of them, on one last mission. Not to save lives this time, but to remind them why those lives had mattered. And there was still one place left to go. The crowd followed at a respectful distance now. No one dared get too close. It was as if they understood. This was Bravo's mission, not theirs, not even Officer Reyes's. The German shepherd's stride had changed. He walked like someone with memory in his paws. Not rushing, not wandering, choosing. They moved past the town square where the flags flew half-mast, though no official decree had been made. Bravo didn't pause there. He turned left instead, down a quieter street, past the corner bakery and the park bench where Reyes had once sat with him after training shifts. Reyes glanced at the leash in his hand. It felt lighter than usual, less like control, more like connection. He knew where Bravo was going. They reached the edge of town, where the old fairground sat behind a rusted chain-link gate. It had not been used in years. Weeds pushed through the cracks in the pavement, and the carousel paint had long since faded. Bravo trotted toward a collapsed metal booth near the far edge. There had been no press release about this one, no media coverage, just a call that had come in quiet, frantic, and close to midnight. A teenage boy, disoriented and armed, had been seen pacing inside the fairgrounds. When officers arrived, they formed a perimeter. But it was Bravo who slipped through a narrow opening in the fence and approached alone. Reyes had barely caught up when he saw the moment that stayed with him forever. Bravo lowering himself to the ground, inch by inch, until he lay still, just feet from the boy. No growl, no bark, just stillness. The teen had dropped the weapon, sat beside him, and sobbed into Bravo's fur. Now, years later, Bravo sat in that same spot. A hush fell over the area, as if the fairground itself remembered. And then, as if called by fate, a young man emerged from the edge of the crowd. Taller now, older, but unmistakable. He wore no uniform, carried no sign, just a quiet expression. His eyes locked with Bravo's. Reyes watched as the young man approached slowly and knelt beside the dog. He did not speak. He simply pressed his forehead to Bravo's for a brief moment, then stood and stepped back into the gathering. Bravo rose again. His paws moved with patience. Reyes followed, not with authority, but with gratitude. They walked along the road that bordered the elementary school, where students had gathered behind windows, some pressing their hands against the glass. A few waved, unsure if they should. One child held up a paper drawing, crayon lines showing Bravo with a cape standing next to a police badge. The path led to the precinct once more, but Bravo veered to the side. He led Reyes around the back, past the generator shed, toward a door that hadn't been opened in years. The old K9 training room. It was dimly lit, barely maintained. The scent of rubber mats and metal lockers still lingered in the air. Bravo stepped inside. Reyes paused at the door. It was here they had trained together, where Bravo had learned the difference between hesitation and heroism, where Reyes, still reeling from the loss of Jet, had learned how to trust again, slowly, silently, and only with Bravo. The room was empty now. Bravo walked to the center and turned in a slow circle, as if scanning for what once had been. He looked toward a corner where a row of wooden training boxes still stood. One of them had once held the collar box. Bravo sat facing it. Reyes stood beside him. He did not speak. He did not need to, because in that quiet space, surrounded by faded paint and the smell of old rope they both knew, this was the beginning and the end, the place where Bravo had learned to serve, and the place he had now returned to, not as a trainee, but as a teacher. A few officers had followed silently and now stood at the doorway. No one crossed the threshold. Reyes lowered himself beside Bravo and rested a hand on his shoulder. "You remember all of it," he said softly. "Every step." Bravo did not respond. He only leaned gently into Reyes, warm and still. The lights flickered once overhead, but the moment stayed intact. Then Reyes stood. Bravo followed. The final leg of the walk was waiting. But something was different now. Reyes no longer held the leash. He let it fall gently beside Bravo, untethered. And yet Bravo stayed beside him. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. They stepped through the door, and outside, something unexpected waited for them. Outside the old training room, the world had grown. What began as a small farewell had become something else entirely. People stood shoulder to shoulder across the parking lot, spilling onto sidewalks and up against fences, Children on their parents' shoulders, veterans in uniform, nurses in scrubs, teenagers with camera phones lowered, not raised, watching, not recording. Somehow, in the time Bravo had walked memory by memory, the world had caught up. Not just the town, not just the state. The video had traveled farther. Faces Bravo would never recognize now watched from live streams across continents, from living rooms, classrooms, fire stations, shelters. The dog was walking home, and they were walking with him. Reyes stood beside Bravo in the doorway, quieted by the scene. He had never been one for attention. Neither had Bravo. But this wasn't noise. It wasn't spectacle. It was respect. Bravo took one step forward, and the sea of people parted gently. No one spoke. No one moved too fast. Then, as if by instinct, a few began to kneel. It started with one child, then a firefighter, then two more. Not forced, not organized, just reverence. Bravo walked the path they created, not on stage, but on sacred ground. Each step left a soft paw print on the concrete. A few officers behind him began marking them with chalk. They didn't ask permission. They simply followed his steps. It was not about art. It was about memory. The trail would not be washed away. Reyes glanced at the leash, still coiled in his hand. But Bravo didn't stray. He stayed close, as he always had. Trained to follow, but always choosing loyalty over command. A television anchor in the crowd whispered into her mic, "This is no longer just a retirement. It's a procession of gratitude." They approached the flagpole. This was where Bravo had received his service medal. It had been quiet then. No crowd, just a nod from the chief, and a silver tag hung beneath his collar. Reyes remembered the way Bravo had simply sat after, as if the medal didn't matter, as if the job had already been its own reward. Now Reyes reached into his jacket and pulled the medal out again. He had kept it with him, not planning to display it. But something told him now was the time. He knelt and affixed it to Bravo's collar once more. "You earned it then," he said. "But the world sees it now." Bravo's ears perked slightly. He looked ahead. The final stretch was clear. Reyes rose, and together they continued. Past the fence, down the path, toward a place few had noticed before. A small grassy circle near the edge of the station grounds, where nothing had been built, where no cases had been cracked or awards given. But it was where Bravo always went after shift. Reyes would unclip the leash, and Bravo would roll in the grass, tongue out, tail high. It was their ritual, a way to shake off the day, a reminder that even warriors need joy. When they arrived, the crowd held back. Bravo stepped into the circle. The grass was shorter now. Fall had browned the edges, but it still carried the scent of open air. Reyes paused at the edge. Bravo turned, as if inviting him in. Reyes stepped into the grass beside him. For a moment, they simply stood. No ceremony, no commands. Then Bravo lay down, not from exhaustion, from peace. He placed his head on his front paws and looked out at the people who had come to witness a moment no one had truly prepared for. And then, as if timed by memory, a soft wind passed through the circle, lifting a few leaves into a gentle spiral. In the silence, Reyes sat beside his partner. He reached over and unhooked the collar, just for a moment, and held it in his hand. It was heavier than he remembered, or maybe his heart was. A child stepped forward from the crowd, then another, and then the girl with the blanket. Older now, but still holding the same piece of cloth. She placed it beside Bravo, gently smoothing it into the grass. The others followed suit. Drawings, notes, a pair of worn bootlaces from another officer, a small toy from a child who had once been pulled from a locked car. The circle became something sacred. Not a grave, not a goodbye, a living tribute. Reyes looked down at Bravo. His eyes were still open, still watching. Not the crowd, not the noise, just Reyes. You ready? He asked quietly. Bravo did not move, but Reyes knew. They would rise together. They always had. And just as Reyes reached for the leash again, not to guide, but to honor, someone at the far end of the crowd shouted softly. Look! Reyes turned, and there, just beyond the fence, a new figure waited. The figure beyond the fence stood motionless. At first, no one recognized him. He wore no badge, no uniform. Just a simple black jacket, sleeves rolled to the elbows. But when he stepped forward, Officer Reyes froze. It was the boy, now a man, who had once been shielded by Bravo in the alley, just seconds before a gunman was disarmed. He had kept his distance throughout the walk, not out of fear, out of reverence. And now he stepped through the gate, hands empty, eyes full. He said nothing. He simply walked to the edge of the grass and knelt. Bravo lifted his head slightly. The man placed his hand on the ground, just a few inches from the shredded blanket the little girl had left. Then he turned his palm upward, a silent gesture of respect. One by one, the crowd followed. They did not all kneel, but they lowered their heads. Some raised a hand to their hearts. Others rested fingers on their children's shoulders, as if passing something forward. Not just memory, but meaning. Reyes stayed seated beside Bravo, watching it unfold. He was not a man prone to speeches, not even today, but there was something in him that needed to be said. He stood slowly, held Bravo's leash, not tight, not pulled, just held it, the way one might hold a photograph before putting it away. His voice was steady, low, but it carried. You think you know what a partner is until you meet one like this. A partner who never asked for anything, who showed up every day, who stood in front of danger because that's just who he was. He looked down. Bravo saved 5 lives that we know of, but he gave something to everyone he met, even me. Reyes paused. I was not ready for him when he came into my life, and I do not feel ready to let him go now. But he walked this whole town today, not for attention, not for applause. He walked it because he remembered, because he wanted to say goodbye his way. He crouched beside Bravo, and because of him, I can finally say goodbye too. The wind shifted, not cold, but insistent. It carried the scent of dry grass and worn leather. Reyes unclipped the leash fully now, let it rest on the ground beside the blanket. Bravo looked up at him. For the first time that day, he wagged his tail, slow, soft, but clear. A murmur rippled through the crowd. It was not joy. It was something quieter, the sound of something settling into the heart. Bravo stood, steady on his feet, and then, without direction, without a signal, he began to walk again, but not toward the precinct, not toward the gate, not toward the crowd. He walked through the circle, beyond the people, into the open field just beyond the station. It was untended, the grass uneven, the path unclear, and yet Bravo walked with purpose, head high, tail low. Reyes did not follow. He watched, others did too. Some cried openly, others held their breath. Bravo walked until he reached a small rise in the earth. Nothing marked it. No plaque, no stone, just a soft patch of grass, a little higher than the rest. There he turned. He looked back, at Reyes, at the town, at the blanket, and he sat, his silhouette framed against the gray sky, his ears lifted to the wind. Someone captured a photo. The image would later go viral. Again, not because of drama, but because of peace. Because it said something no words could. That heroes do not always need finish lines. That some walks never really end. That a dog could carry the weight of memory on 4 legs and leave behind more than paw prints. He could leave a town changed. Reyes stayed at the edge of the field long after the others had gone. He walked home without the leash, but not empty-handed. In his pocket was the silver medal, and in his heart the quiet steps of a dog who had walked beside him, not just through danger, but all the way home. Dogs truly are the most loyal companions in our lives. What did you think of this heartwarming story? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily emotional dog stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Click here to watch the next story of love, loyalty, and the incredible bond we share with our paw-some friends.